Nature has always been an abundant provider, and man the lord of creation. An eminently sensible arrangement which made everybody very happy. With one or two exceptions. To be precise, two exceptions. The first was that all foods are seasonal and perishable. The second, that most foods are local, which was very, very distressing. Although it had its moments, for the squirrel. But man is a resourceful animal, so he soon set about correcting those fundamental errors of creation. He tried smoking food, pickling, canning. He even experimented with refrigeration. All in all, he had a terrible time, to very little purpose. Which brings us to the 20th century, Anno Domini. In the 20th century, the problem is even more critical. The problem of supplying densely concentrated areas with enough local, seasonal, and perishable foods. The solutions? Well, there are artificially preserved and processed foods, if they're what you fancy, and of course, fresh foods. Jolly good. But you do have to take them complete with pods, peel, husks, and shells, wastage, which incidentally you have to pay for. Then, fresh foods often take some time to get from where they're grown to where they're needed. This spinach is perfect. If you grow it or happen to live right where it's grown, you're very lucky. You can have fresh, crisp spinach morning, noon, and night right through the season. And if you don't live in the right place, well, it's got to reach you, and it may have quite a distance to go. Oh, you'll get your spinach all right, but it will have traveled and been handled and suffered a loss of food value. In fact, freshness is comparative, and you have to accept the fact that what is fresh in the field is something rather different from what we call fresh in the shop. 20 centuries of progress, and we wind up with fresh food that is comparatively fresh, in season, or preserved foods which have changed their original texture, color, and flavor, even though they may be delicious in their own right. What about refrigeration? Well, at first, man thought that ordinary refrigeration was the perfect answer. But then he discovered something rather depressing. He discovered that foods which were refrigerated in the ordinary way just went bad rather less quickly than those which were left alone. The real secret of keeping food fresh wasn't discovered until 1920. An American inventor, Clarence Birdseye, then larking about in the Arctic, noticed that food frozen by a very steep and sudden drop in temperature preserved its qualities for an amazingly long time. He realized this was something very different from ordinary refrigeration. His discovery could be enormously important if it could be applied to the problem of food preservation on a large scale. The fact of the matter is that all bodies contain a large percentage of water. Green peas, for instance, may have a water content as high as 80%. When a food passes through the temperature range 32 degrees Fahrenheit to 25 degrees Fahrenheit, a range known as the zone of maximum crystal formation, most of this water is frozen. The size of the ice crystals formed in freezing depends on how quickly the water is frozen. Normal freezing does this slowly, so the crystals grow very large. But if the food is frozen quickly, the ice crystals form very rapidly, and in consequence, they're much smaller. Food tissues, like those in the pea, are made up of minute cells containing water in which are dissolved the salts and minerals that give the food its nutritive value and flavor. If these cells are frozen slowly, ice crystals begin to form at about 32 degrees Fahrenheit between them, drawing the water out of the cells. The longer the food takes to pass through the zone of maximum crystal formation, the larger the ice crystals become, until eventually they squeeze the cells out of shape. This means that on defrosting, the cells remain collapsed, and much of their flavor and food value drains away. But if the food is frozen very quickly, it passes through the zone of maximum crystal formation so rapidly that only microscopic ice crystals are formed, and these within the cells. This means that the flavor and value of the food is retained when it's defrosted, because the cells are not damaged. In fact, the cell is preserved fresh. The application of this principle on a large scale, known as quick freezing, meant a revolution in the science of food preservation. But quick freezing can only preserve fresh foods. It can't improve them. So you must ensure that the crops are of the highest quality. That's where the fieldsmen from the company's agricultural department come in. Their job is to find farmers with good land and explain the way in which they could work in with the quick freezing company. A contract guarantees the farmer a price for his crop. More important, it gives the company control over the treatment of the crop from the first preparation of the land right up to the time of harvest. The fieldsman makes his first contact with the farmer in October, a bleak time in the farming year, all dung and ditching and bare trees. The first job is to inspect the land. Well, there's no magic in this. It's simply that since only the finest crops are wanted for quick freezing, the company must ensure that the soil is good enough to yield them. Take peas, for instance. You can grow them on many types of soil, but they won't come to much if they're grown on acid soil. So the fieldsman collects some samples of the soil and tests them to see whether they are acid or not, and, if necessary, sends them away to be analyzed. If the soil is neutral or thereabouts, that's fine. If it isn't, then he discusses with the farmer the most suitable means of correcting it. They also agree on the best fertilizer treatment. The farmer's left alone for a bit then, until the year's turned the corner and we're into spring. At this time every year, the Unilever Research Centre, Colworth House, has been busy testing seeds for germination. There are many strains to be investigated, and they decide by germination and growing trials which of them are best for quick freezing. Then, with the results of their research, the farmer will be getting down to planting. This has to be planned at carefully calculated intervals, because peas have a short period of maturity, and when it comes to harvesting, the company have to get them in and quick freeze them while they are really at their best. Planting is planned to ensure that the crops mature over a period and in manageable quantities, so that the factory will have the right amount of peas to handle at the right intervals. You don't have to guess the moment to harvest your peas. When the fieldsman knows a crop is almost at its peak, he collects a number of samples from various parts of the field and takes them away for testing. At the plant, the samples are inspected and then passed on to a special instrument which measures their tenderness, called, curiously enough, a tenderometer. The whole key to quick freezing is that the moment of harvesting like the growing itself, is controlled exactly. When the samples reach the right degree of tenderness, then the blades of the reaper can turn. For the quick freezer, the pea harvest is a matter of hours and minutes. On the spot, men and machinery pod the peas and get rid of the waste. There's half a factory in the corner of the field. In order that the peas should be frozen while they are absolutely fresh, the vining stations must be close to the plant, and a continuous shuttle service is operated to get the peas from the field and into the plant in the shortest possible time. The quick freezer must plan for speed as the general for victory. By midday, the doors of the frosters open for peas that were growing in the field earlier that same morning. These frosters consist of a series of metal plates through which a refrigerant runs at minus 28 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 60 degrees below freezing. The flat trays containing the cartons are closed hydraulically to give direct contact at top and bottom of the carton. By this method, the pack can be reduced to 0 degrees Fahrenheit very quickly, and the speed of refrigeration ensures that only minute ice crystals are formed, and these within the cell walls. Just as all kinds of fruit and vegetables can be brought in from the field, so fish reach the plant within an hour or so of landing. In a matter of hours from the quay or the field, the foods are quick frozen and in the cold store. A fantasy land with strange inhabitants and weird Arctic landscapes. Normally we would use quick frozen foods just like ordinary foods on the day they're bought. But they can be kept for up to 3 days in the ice-making compartment of a refrigerator. Today, quick freezing means that a wide range of fresh foods, poultry, vegetables, fruit and fish, can be enjoyed all the year round, regardless of season, no matter where they've been grown. Today, man is truly king of nature. Now it's the turn of our friend the squirrel to envy man's ability to capture and preserve the fresh and seasonal delights of his table.